You're listening to The Founder Fix, a podcast by Maiku. We're here to sit with you in the messy, hard, and often ridiculous reality of building startups.
You're looking pretty snazzy today.
Oh, these are the new glasses.
Tortoiseshell. Oh, well done. They look snazzy. I like your red lippy too.
Oh, yeah. So it's this lip balm. It's actually a lip balm. So it's so soft on my lips. I have the same lip balm in like 7 colors.
What's the brand?
It is called Sugar.
Well, once you find your favorites, as if you're going to change. I'm the same. Have you come across Rode yet?
Nah.
It is the only thing that I pack with me to go everywhere because it's, should we just go like affiliate marketing here? Because they're like, advertise their product
At Sephora.
That's right. Hi, Sephora. But this is so good because look, I'm going to show you. It's a little stick like this, but it's the ultimate multitasker because look, it gives you a little bit of color.
Yep.
Here, right? So a bit of that and then a bit on the lips. Oh,
Perfect.
bougie. Done. So here we are. We're all bougie and we're all glammed up. Oh yeah. Do an intro. That'd be smart.
All right. Shall I?
Shall you?
Hi, I'm Becci Reed, founder of Maiku, and I am joined today by my good friend, Mariane Power.
Ooh.
So Matt, tell me if I'm butchering this. I like to describe you to others as an elite performance scientist who specializes in neuro-inclusive leadership, and generally you focus on the top 1% of habits and systems that high performers often overlook. What have I missed?
No, I think that's beautiful. I think that when I think of what a high performer is, it's possibly a different content and context to others though. I do definitely work with elite humans who do incredible things. But for me, a high performer is somebody who is striving towards their potential. So looking at the systems, the environments, the mindsets, the health behaviors, the whole human functionality, and then how we can scaffold around some of our differences as opposed to trying to kind of white knuckle them and correct them.
Since we hang out, I use the word scaffolding so much more in my life these days.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, Mads, before we hit today's docket, what does de-bloating the founder experience mean to you? Because this is a lot about how I describe what this podcast is meant to be.
Yeah, when I read that, I just had such a visceral reaction and I felt bloated. It's like I could just feel my whole body filling up and feeling inflamed and feeling agitated and just I wanted to get everything out of my way. So it was just such a beautiful metaphor. And I think when I'm working with founders in particular, if I then take that into what are they actually dealing with and what do I see? It's all the extra stuff. Like we opened up to our conversation quite casually about the expectations that we have on self, the way that we perceive we need to present ourselves to others, all of the mind clutter that goes along with that, the stories we hold of what does success look like. But then I think about it from an operational perspective and I just, probably similarly to you, get so frustrated with all of the unnecessary clutter that sits around a founder. And some of it is definitely self-generated around the shoulds and the woulds and the coulds and the must-haves. But I think a lot of it is also a systemic bloating that I'm really interested in removing. I think the accelerators and some of the VC ecosystems are getting better at this. But the responsibility, especially in the early phases, typically lies completely on the founder to be able to identify their own bottlenecks and to be able to put that scaffolding and that structuring around it. So what does it mean for you, though? I'm really curious.
Yeah, for me, it really is like filtering anything that's not hyper focused on the one critical item that de-risks my startup right now.
You said that so succinctly. What she said.
Since I've introduced a template in my life through Maiku that allows me to say, okay, what does a successful week look like for me? Because as a founder, the majority of us get to the end of the week and look back and go, I've not achieved what I want to. Generating this template that says, okay, what is the one thing right now, one thing that I need to learn that will de-risk my startup? And then I say, okay, what is the one thing that I need to achieve right now that's going to keep my startup alive? And what is the one thing that I'm doing right now that's holding myself back? And I review them each week to say, is that actually still the top learning? Is that actually still the top achievement? Is that the top growth? And then I set my week as to what I'm doing to access that learning, to achieve that, and to grow. And then I say, okay, what's the one thing you need to stop doing so that you can learn this just for the next potentially 7 days, 90 days, whatever it is? What can you stop doing that is not helping you learn that, achieve that, or grow? Right? In that way. What do you need to start doing that you're not doing? And it's usually around showing some gumption, like let's get out of our comfort zone a little bit. Usually that one is to growth. And then what's working really well for you right now that will help to do that? And it's so interesting that just when I focus on those to start with, so we set the goals and the habits, they're often completely contradictory. Yeah. And so it's to look at those goals and say, are they telling a consistent story? And if I only had 3 hours, how do these work? And I have a few questions that I go through each week. There's 9 questions, but it helps me, I guess, review a successful week and say, well, if I did all these things, I've predetermined I've had a successful week. And so I had so much anger towards myself on a Friday night, and it's just relieved a lot of that. And it's helped me close my laptop for sure.
There's a few different things that come up for me there. Yeah. The first one was, I think you've really hit the nail on the head on some practical ways that we can overcome that perfectionistic tendency that can show up of never enough. How do I do more? And so putting some constraints in place for yourself. But then the other thing that came up for me, especially because of the community I work with, being neurodivergent, the sparkly brains often come with time perception differences, which means that on the one hand, it's, okay, I might be able to mentally think that I'm picking one thing, but my perception of how much time that one thing might take and my capacity to be able to break that thing down to component parts. So the planning, the organization component parts, that task initiation and task completion, I can see that getting in the way too. So I'm curious to hear from you how you came up with did you say 9 questions that help you to sort of establish that set point at that end point and put your constraints in? What do they look like?
Yeah. Peak performance is the first one. So peak performance is I've improved my skill. I'm feeling meaning and alignment to what I'm doing. I'm managing my energy. And then execution quality is I've achieved an important outcome and shared it publicly, because often as founders, it's like, we fixed a feature, but still no one knows about us, right? So it's basically getting something done and sharing it. It's learning something important that helps you make a strategic decision as a founder and reducing a blocker or a challenge. And the third is around leadership. So it's around, have I actually added value to my community? Did I help an ideal customer or current customer have a win? And have I taken the time to even celebrate a small win of my own this week? And so when I look at that as a week, it's, I've leveled up my skills as a founder. I achieved an outcome. I've shared it. I've reduced a blocker. Suddenly to me, I might have done one experiment that takes 80% of that off, but it was the most important thing that I needed to do as a founder, as opposed to a list of 50 things that I need to tick off.
Can we just booknote that you've literally put the scaffolding around yourself that is absent for so many founders? So if you're listening, this is what you need to do. So the feedback loop that Becci was talking about earlier is the number one thing that founders fail at. And I would say anybody who's trying to achieve an ultimate transformative goal fails at. And they get to the 80% and they feel within themselves, okay, I'm achieving this thing, but then they don't release it into the world. So they don't get that option for the iterative interaction that is required in order to develop and to deliver. Back in the day, I would have a million things that needed to be done on my to-do list that I realistically thought could be ticked, and the angst that would come if I didn't get through that list. So I learned pretty quickly the importance and the value of my not to-do list. And so my not to-do list looks like I'll sit down with a great big red pen, and the first one I'll do is I'll mark out and go, okay, does this actually need to be done? And if the answer is no, it gets a red mark. And then I'll ask, okay, does it need to be done right now? So is there a pressing timeline for this? Is somebody expecting it? Do I want the feedback? What's the right now component part? And if the answer is no, or maybe not, then I would circle it because I would be able to come back to it and schedule it. And then I'd be asking myself, does it need to be done by me? Because especially in the early founder days, I was so obsessed with having total control over everything that I did, partly because I wasn't great at delegating. I've had to learn that skill, but also because it was my baby, right? So I didn't want to outsource. But the minute that I realized actually some of the stuff on this list doesn't need to be done by me and could probably be done better by somebody else, I've now got 3 exit points for my to-do list, which left then what was left for me and or what was left to schedule. So that as a practice for me has been really helpful. And I would have to also then say, back to your de-bloating, self-compassion.
Yeah.
You know, if you do not have a practice of self-compassion, get it yesterday. And by self-compassion, by the way, I think most people, what comes to mind is that I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to make myself a cup of tea. I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. They're lovely things to do. I'm talking about the kind of self-compassion where if you were the CEO of your own mind right now, what would you be saying to yourself as an employee? And I'm talking about the kind of CEO that's really got your back and really is invested in you. And so sometimes that is that self-care, soft nurturing, I need to just take a breath. But sometimes it's fierce self-compassion and it's putting boundaries in place and it's saying no to things that you might sort of feel like you should say yes to, but it's going to rob you of your tomorrow's yes. If anyone's listening and wants to follow up and hasn't come across self-compassion work, I think from the Eastern philosophies and traditions into the Western world, Kristen Neff has done a really great job in this space and has brilliant audiobooks and workbooks. And for those who don't vibe with her, Tara Brach is another really good contributor.
That's essentially why I built those 9 questions, because they allow me to show compassion to myself.
Yeah, in a structured way too.
Yeah. And it was interesting because when I was talking to Mick and describing the resentment I had for myself in any case, whether I had my laptop out or not out, and the guilt that I felt for mom and the perpetual guilt that continues throughout the entire day, he was exhausted at the thought of it. Yeah. He's like, my brain goes to, I'm doing this. Now I'm going to water my garden. Now I'm going to change my baby's diaper. He's like,
he can compartmentalize and leave it behind.
Yeah, he was exhausted by the thought of this perpetual cycle of guilt throughout the day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the push-pull that seems to be quite unique to women. And actually what's really interesting in the research as well on compassion and self-compassion is that the opposite effects are true for gender, split by gender. And they haven't done work on non-binary communities or gender fluid, so I can't speak to that. But the findings on male versus female are really clear. Yeah. And it's that the men are really great at self-compassion, not as great with compassion. And the reverse is true. So women are amazing at being compassionate to others, not so great on self-compassion. And I wonder if that compartmentalization piece that you were speaking to has something to do with it.
Okay, so first up on the docket is freshly baked. So this is where we're going to cut through the noise of a current thing. We'll consider potential new concept for early stage founders. And today's topic is, are founders training like pro athletes for the Olympics without the fan club?
You wrote this especially for me, this one.
So if we look at failure rates, fewer than 10% of Olympians ever win a medal, and only 10% of established growth startups achieve an acquisition or a public list. Up to 35% of elite athletes suffer from mental health issues or burnout at the peak of their careers. Yeah. And research also indicates that 72% of entrepreneurs report mental health concerns, with massive percentages experiencing severe burnout and isolation.
Yeah.
If we look at vulnerability, I'm going to guess, and again, this is where I'm going to call to you, execution is around 90% training, 10% public performance, whereas high quality startup execution is public performance from day one, which means all failures are public before we've even proven viability.
Yes. Yeah.
And now if we look at that and then say, okay, now let's look at the family and friend support systems. If an athlete goes to a training facility for 6 hours on a Saturday, their family, I assume, view it as like mandatory dedication to their dream. But if a founder opens their laptop for 6 hours on a Saturday, our family often view it as an unhealthy boundary issue. And so I think we need a cultural shift where the founder journey is understood as an elite discipline and not treated as a workaholism problem. And given your extensive work with athletes and with founders as well, first I want to say, what missing context have I not thought of here? But then what can we learn from the athlete world to improve the support environment around early stage founders who are on this same elite journey?
Yeah, I agree, which is why I started working in the athlete arena. And also because, spoiler alert, turns out lots of elite athletes are also neurodivergent. Buzzkill. And founders are too. And I figured out the founder part because the creativity aspect, right? But I was like, where else do these humans hang out? And it's the athlete circuit. And so, yes, I think there are some similarities. Where I think some of the differences are, and I really am interested in your thinking around the workaholism. I hadn't actually thought about things from that level. Being an athlete is in some ways could be perceived as a very self-indulgent participatory thing, right? Right. You have to be, but you have to be because everything is on you in order for that one race that you're expected to win or you're wanting to win. That's what you're working towards. The mental preparation, the physical preparation, all of the things, keeping the system, the training, the whole thing. And the lead up to that, you see mum and or dad takes over the responsibility of driving kiddo to the ridiculous hours or taking them to camps, or somebody invests their entire mortgage into this kid's potential pathway. So I don't know that we've necessarily got the story quite right on the sacrifices that are made within the athlete community. And I partly think that's because our hero story is so solid in the athlete sector. And I think that's driven by, as humans, we're struck by wonder and awe. It's one of the driving forces that we want to be engaged by, and we want to be entertained by, and we want to be inspired by. And so athletes are very aspirational in that way. We can turn them on the television and go, wow, look at what you did. We're seeing the highlight reel. We're not seeing all of the hardship behind the scenes. And I also agree with you that there is a need for an ecosystem and a news story about a founder that gives a hero journey that we can all look to and aspire to. I don't think we have enough founder stories, and we certainly don't have enough diverse founder stories of the podium moment.
I actually would disagree, only because I think there are so many podcasts around how did you get there? And that's the reason why I wanted to start this podcast. I actually have been looking at through Maiku how I can generate storytelling where the founder communicates. So when I look at my auto-generated monthly updates, how do I generate a version of that update that is for a potential investor? How do I generate an automated monthly update that is specific to family and friends that brings them each month on that journey? So it's storytelling, but it's taking the community around them on the journey with them and sharing the highs and lows. So many of our families have no idea what we're doing. You know, our mothers at a bar, you cannot describe what we're doing. And
That's
I
so
think
true.
we could do a better job of storytelling each step of the way. Maybe we could better provide ourselves some scaffolding. And instead of do you get the laptop out again, or how's your startup going? Are you profitable yet? Instead, it could be fun.
And that's what I meant. Okay, so that's okay. So again, we're agreeing. That's what I meant by the podium story. We don't have the awe and the wonder around the creativity, around the struggle that it took to get there, around the sacrifices, to your point, around the wins and the losses. We don't have that. So I think the difference for me is that the athlete is the center of the desired outcome, which is to win the race. The founder's not. I don't think they are. I think the founder is actually the coach of the vision.
Yeah.
So the founder is almost the unsung hero unless the vision articulates and gets on the podium. And if it doesn't, they're the lost story and they're another one. So I think you're onto something. I think the storytelling component parts are really important. But I also think, how can we find the podium moment for the founder that hits our human hearts differently than the promise of money?
I
of
agree.
capitalization. Because they're the stories we hear. We hear about the unicorns and how much money they made. To the community who aren't in entrepreneurial land, which is where I think you're trying to translate that message to get greater support.
Yeah.
There's a total absence.
Like to
of
me, an
understanding.
athlete still goes to the family barbecue and people get the dream. People get it.
100%. Yeah. But they're sold the dream.
Yeah.
And it's not attached to finance. It's not attached to money.
I feel like as a founder at the barbecue, people don't even know what to ask.
No.
And I think
but they've also got no connection to the creativity, to the awe, to the process, to the journey. Yeah.
Which adds to, because founder isolation, as we said, was 35% for athletes statistically, the 75% for founders.
Yeah, it's massive because the ecosystem around an athlete is the same ecosystem that goes, let's call it the Olympics, right?
It's the
all
dream.
Coaches go, it's the dream, but they all get to participate in the dream and they've got buy-in for the dream. Plus then you've got the families who can visibly see the dream. But the founders don't have that. The founders have, did you make the money? Did you sell the thing? Did you become the unicorn? And even their own ecosystem, and again, I think it's getting better, but even their own ecosystem isn't buying into the human elements and protecting the human elements around them in the same way. So my pushback is how do we do that? How do we have responsibility where it's not just the founder on their own individualistically needing to do all the things, but that they have got support. And it's a wicked problem. I don't have the answers to it, but for me, that's the difference between the two systems.
Now it's time for the confessional.
Uh-oh.
So this is where we're going to own our bad decisions and our bad actions.
We did this for the first hour of our conversation.
I know. The goal here is to help other founders avoid making our decisions, which, and let's be honest, everyone kind of needs to make their own. But today's topic is the great unlearning. So I want to know what's something you used to swear by. What is something you used to swear by that you now realize for you is a total mistake?
Generosity.
Yeah.
And I know that totally contradicts what I was saying earlier, so let me clarify. I think I used to think... I think the difference for me is that I used to swear by generosity as a business strategy, right?
Same.
So, and not in a manipulative way, but I think I believed that if I gave generously, like if I shared insight, if I helped people think better, then somehow from a meritocratic perspective, that value would be recognized and that reciprocity would just naturally follow. You know, it was just like magic, this happens. And I've learned that that's not the case and that there are really, really real world consequences for believing in that as being the case. But I do still believe in generosity as a value. I just don't think it's a business model. Unless, you know, to our earlier point, it has those boundaries. So I don't think it was in being generous, to be clear. I think it was being generous without a container as to where that generosity was going and what it was for and who it was for and where it was given back. And I probably delayed some fee and scope conversations because I think a part of me wanted the work to be able to prove itself in order for me to have to name the value.
For me, I have a very, very different unlearning.
Yeah.
For me, it's the trap of prep time. So I'm going to call this the rabbit hole effect.
Okay, I just feel like that's why I said tell me more and make that face, because I know you're going to say something right now that I'm just not even prepared to unlearn because I do it too. Go on.
Anyone who knows me has worked with me. You've seen it, how ridiculously meticulous I am. I turn up to everything completely ready, well in advance, blah, 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 blah. And I'll be honest, it was actually the introduction of AI that probably put a magnifying glass to my behaviors.
Interesting.
What I realized when I had access to AI that by preparing for things early, I was actually going down these deeper rabbit holes and over-engineering solutions, which we as founders know is very, very dangerous. So recently, I've actually started working on a just-in-time mantra where really only start working on the item when I don't have much time. Like it's a really tight, immediate time frame to get it done. It forced me to actually have an MVP mindset to my day where I have this like ruthless focus around the absolute minimum to deliver value and move Maiku forward on that task.
An MVP mindset to your day. Can someone just write that down and put it on a t-shirt? That is awesome. But you think about why it's awesome. It's not just put yourself on. So where I interrupt you is like, that is a thing, especially for ADHDers. Time constraints really helps to get stuff in, right? It's like, especially if you've got time perception difficulties, any ADHD will tell you, give them a deadline, they're your human. Gets you out of the rabbit hole real quick. But I like the MVP to your day because a minimum viable product, again, it's the shipping it component part for the purpose of getting the feedback to do the next thing. Whereas the ship it sister mentality is kind of like, I'm done and I'm out. And I think that's maybe where I see a lot of resistance. Whereas the MVP is like, oh, well, you've sort of done this part. The next part's around the corner. So if you find out you need to rabbit hole, so do you know why it also appeals to me? Oh my gosh, okay, you're going to send me down my own like verbal rabbit hole. So a part of my own neurodivergent profile, I think, is something called PDA. Just a teeny tiny part. My husband's going to laugh at this because he knows that if he wants me to do anything, he cannot ask me directly to do it because I'll be like, not happening. But if he tells me not to do it, chances are I'll be like, what do you mean I can't do that thing? So PDA is terrible name, pathological demand avoidance, and we see it a lot in the neurodivergent community. It gets a light shone on it when you see it at the extreme end. And so the extreme end for PDA kiddos is really hard. Like you're talking about kiddos where their nervous system is so tightly wired to a demand being a perceived threat on them biologically and physically. Like they see saber-toothed tigers when you ask them to clean their teeth. And so what you oftentimes will see is either internalizing behavior that, you know, turns into shaming and blaming and eating disorders and cutting. Here's my old clinical knowledge coming out. And or externalizing behaviors where you get the kid who is oppositionally defiant, lol, don't get me started, throwing the chair across the room. So that's the extreme end of the profile. But where I experience it and why I love the MVP of the day is because I hate being told what to do. Like if you put a demand on me, I have a physical reaction. So PDA it's only been studied in the autistic community, and the longer I've hung out with particularly ambitious, highly intelligent, neurodivergent people, I'm like, BS. PDA is everywhere. Once you understand the beast, you're like, okay, let me give you an invitation as opposed to a demand right now, right? And so the ship it sister, that's a demand. That's a demand, and I'm out of control. And once it's released, I've got nothing. So that's a demand, and that activates my freak out, if you like, for want of a better word, but my fight, my flight, my freeze, my fawn. So what am I going to do? I'm going to rabbit hole instead. I'm going to avoid. I'm going to procrastinate. I'm going to move the deadline. MVP my day, that's an invitation because I know that it's going to come back to me. It's like a boomerang effect. I think you're onto something, Becci. We should test this.
Let's move on to the third rail. So for anyone who doesn't know, and I'm not sure if you know, Maz, but a third rail is essentially an extra rail that runs along railway tracks, and it's supplying all the electric power to the trains. And so it carries thousands of volts that if you touch it, it's like fatal electrocution. As a metaphor, it essentially touchable politically suicidal topics.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Excellent.
So today's topic.
Let's throw Maz in the fire and see what happens.
Right? Why not? Get your team profile to mathematically game a capital raise. And specifically, should I, as a female founder, male co-founder, if I want to raise capital? So should I start with stats, or do you want to share your immediate reactions first?
Yeah, my immediate reaction is that strategically I can understand why this question exists, but ethically and psychologically, I hate that this question has to exist. And practically, I'm actually really glad that you're asking it. So go on, give me some stats.
Okay, so globally, solo female founders secure less than 2% of venture capital funding.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
And I imagine if you're a solo non-technical founder, that stat is like even much closer to zero. I get hit pretty hard by the female startup community when I say this publicly. But if I'm a non-technical solo female founder wanting to raise capital, why wouldn't I look at bringing on a male technical co-founder specifically structured for the raise window? If there's a system that is biased against you, whether we want to admit it or not, rather than complaining about the rules, why don't we optimize our team stack to win it?
Yeah. So what's really interesting as I'm hearing you say that is that I have conversations with founders where the opposite is true. Maybe it's more in the grant spaces, to be fair, but there is a lot of opportunity and there's a lot of desirability around getting women into tech, but also around different minority groups showing up commercially. But I think it's only for the early phases, right? And then where I get irritated is that there's this drop-off effect. It's like everybody wants the DEI signals in the first phase of capital raising. Yeah, and there's not really then the protective mechanisms to make it work. So there's a cost of not strategically playing the game, and there's a cost of strategically playing the game. So for me, it's a cost-benefit analysis on a case-by-case, but I'm so curious to hear your thinking on this one.
I think you're right that it is in the grant sector predominantly, and that it's in an early stage. The venture capital is irrespective of the desire to have more diverse founders has not really gone.
Hasn't budged. Yeah.
And so if we were to look at it and just say it is less than 2%, or much closer to zero if you're non-technical, let's just to say, for argument's sake, we do a 12 to 18 month milestone-based vesting schedule. So maybe 6 to 9 months, we bring on a technical founding team member for the raise, and then 6 to 9 months post-raise. And look, if it's a cultural fit for long-term, awesome, they stick around. But if it's not, for me, I still see it as a highly successful strategic partnership. And so if I offer a strategic technical partner 3% equity for an 18-month execution block, which isn't full-time necessarily to help me through that raise and technical conversations as I get through due diligence and all the rest of it, and help me build the structure of the team and whatever it is over 18 months, I'm paying a pretty nominal operational cost and only on success of the raise. So for me, if it fundamentally shifts my fundraising probability, to me, that's like smart risk management.
So I'm wondering about the level of transparency you're having with your potential co-founder on the strategy, if you like, behind the approach in this hypothetical situation. Like, are they on board with going, yeah, I agree with you, babe. Like, the stats are shit. Let me help you out with this.
So if I'm brought on as a technical partner that can help someone through a raise, and I can do that part-time and potentially walk away with 3% of a company that could scale.
Yeah.
Like, because normally your vesting schedule's 4 years.
So you're assuming you're recruiting a potential co-founder who's genuinely invested in what you as a female are building and who is seeing the benefit in not just coming on and supporting this part of the strategy, but you're having these open, transparent conversations about, hey, buddy, like, here's where I'm at. You're a great person for the job, regardless of your gender. And also, P.S., I need this to get to here, and you're going to be a part of the journey for this amount of time. Is that your strategy? See, I just don't know that many people would think to do that, and that they would have the emotional intelligence and the communication skills to get there. I think it's a great idea. Because, like, to be clear, I would never gaslight a female founder and say, no, just be excellent at your job and strive for that North Star, and the money's going to come. The evidence doesn't support that. You've just read the stats out. And I think the pattern matching and gendered assumptions are real, but I think I'd be cautious about adding a male co-founder as a kind of like credibility prosthetic, even to hit those stats, without the transparent agreements really thought out and communicated in the process as part of the strategy. So for me, it's not as simple as get a male co-founder. That's your strategy. I think what you've articulated in terms of it's a contract, and I think it needs to be a co-designed contract, as does any relationship really. I would hate to see it as a pitch prop.
The pitch prop won't work. You won't get through DD.
No, and that's where I think my resistance was. It was like, how is this going to work? It doesn't matter if you're with a co-founder for 3 months or 300 years. Like, you need to be on the same page or the BS is going to spill through real quick.
Exactly. So it really is just finding the right people to get you through a raise. They don't have to be team members forever. And look, if the cultural fit is right and those people stick with you and join your team, what a win.
What a win.
And if you, they still walk away with something and they've increased your odds 20x or whatever that ends up being.
Yeah,
Just
100%. It does make sense. And I think, again, going back to that ideal world scenario, which we don't live in, I wish we didn't have the conversation. And that instead of asking, should I find myself a male co-founder, we could be asking, what credibility signal do I need right now? And is being undervalued potentially in what I have to offer? And therefore, how do I fill that gap? And how do I do that in a way that is values aligned and transparent?
I would tell investors too. It wouldn't be something I would hide from investors. I would say I've brought them on for the 6 to 9 months leading into the raise, and they will be with me for 6 to 9 months on the other side of the raise, at least, to make sure we're set up to scale. And in that time, we're going to X, Y, and Z. Like, I would make sure to say, hey, the reason they're here is to help make sure that I can communicate clearly with you. And like, I would be an open book about it. It's certainly not something that I would be doing to manipulate the investors, but it absolutely would be a strategy to increase my odds in being able to cross the line.
It's funny now that you say that, because I get approached all the time as the ticker box, can I put you on my pitch deck because of my clinical background? And I don't think it's that dissimilar, really, to what you're suggesting. And yet nobody would necessarily challenge a founder coming to me for the brand badge because of my clinical psychology background and scientific background. They'd go, oh, well, that just makes sense. You need to have a scientist on the board, right? But if the opposite was true and I was to approach a male and to openly disclose the reason why I was doing this, I would have a hard time thinking about having that conversation prior to this conversation. Now I've got a strategy. Thank you very much, Becci.
You're welcome. So I have 3 questions for you.
Okay.
First being, how are you really doing right now?
I have cognitively been trying to figure out where the hell my funk has been the last 6 months. And I couldn't identify it as a burnout, but I was noticing myself really stepping back for the first time in I can't remember how long, and lacking motivation in my purpose and my own North Star, and really losing some clarity around what that was and why it was there, which was really odd for me because I've always had a very magical connection to my North Star, to the point where when other people said to me, but how do you find your purpose? I'm like, well, how do you not? And so to have a disconnect from that feeling has been quite foreign to me and quite confronting. And I've been looking at that closely. So to answer your actual question, how am I right now? I am curious right now. I am coming to a place of peace. I think I maybe got comfortable with purpose being my motivating force. My business has ironically never been better. I've got dream clients. I'm doing next to zero. Like, if you look me up online at the moment, you're like, who is this person? Where has she been? I am the least visible I've been in a long time, with the most incredible clients on my books and the most amazing opportunities presenting themselves inbound. But the hunger's ironically not quite there, or it's different. So I'm curious. I'm in transit mode.
Second question, how are you letting yourself down right now as a founder?
The should story is I should be visible. I should be putting more things out there. I should be online. So the 2025 version of Maz had the podcast, launched the YouTube series, has the regular email that goes out, does research projects with insane groups of people just because I could, very product heavy, as in like producing, right? So I should be doing that. I'm losing visibility. The part of me that's seeking peace and that is really curious right now, I don't know that I can answer your question. I'm genuinely kind of vibing.
A couple of weeks ago when we had our call, there was a complete energy shift. And then afterwards, when you WhatsApped me, it was like, gosh, I didn't realize I needed that.
Yeah, the
And
playfulness,
pardon?
the playfulness part
Yeah.
was back. Yeah.
One,
Yeah, which it does make me wonder if it was a variation of burnout. Because, clinically speaking, if you define burnout, you tend to see more cynicism, you tend to see you're shutting down and withdrawal. I do have a little bit of a hypothesis that probably burnouts look different for ADHDers, and I've written and spoken about this before. And that it's more about finding the right type of rest for us. Burnout doesn't feel like the right phrase, but I think maybe I've come out of a highly technical season where there's a lot of administrative work, there's a lot of, strategic work, there's a lot of sales BDM style of work, which isn't me in my fun zone. And I'm enjoying this period of creative hibernation and going inwards and dreaming back up again, and just allowing space and having trust that when I reemerge, if I want to reemerge and be more visible and be more public and put things back out there, that if I do that, it'll be because the time is right and because the thing that I've got to offer is going to be well received. Some of that comes with being old too. P.S. like hormones. So, lol.
hey, look, you're a raging pregnant person, right?
I love it.
Being a founder is really, really, really hard.
It is.
What for you makes it all worth it?
I feel like I come into this conversation with such a position of privilege. So I just want to name that. I'm married for 20 years this year and have always worked for myself. I've got a husband who financially has been able to buffer those seasons for me where I've wanted to build, and we've agreed that we're in our build phase. I'm someone who really doesn't just value but needs autonomy. And there's a dark side to that because you spoke earlier. I think when we're in control of our own adventure as a founder, we can go too far. So there's a dark side of that definitely needs managing. But oh my gosh, I don't know that I could ever work for anybody else. There's that, like the autonomy piece. I can work with people, don't get me wrong, but being able to decide where I want to put my energy, when I want to pivot, where I want to get curious and why, how I want to spend and invest my time and my money and my contribution. Like, is there actually anything any better? I don't understand people who don't want to be founders, to be honest with you. I don't think it's for everybody. I mean, I even love the hard days. I love the hard days because I've got this weird thing that hard gives you the best kind of data to work with.
Agreed.
So I'm a bit of a freak like that. And at the same time, again, that comes from the place of privilege. I think the hardest times have been those moments where I've had to give myself a timeline and go, there is zero money coming in right now. I need to have a hard look at, is this a hobby or is this something that's going to generate not just impact, but also money, and not cost us money. Those have been the hardest moments because without market validation or without being able to find the thing where you can just, like the seasons where it's like, man, you're just paying your bills. That's the muscle to back yourself and to know what you're backing as opposed to ego, and to be able to then communicate that's hard. So in terms of what makes it worth it, yeah, it just comes back to the choice, the autonomy, the freedom, the creativity, the expression. And it's going to sound so #gratitude, but you get one life.
Yeah.
Like how incredible to be directing it with my unique set of skills, values, beliefs, desires, dreams, visions towards something in a way that I choose. And P.S., that's not unique to me. You've all got your own unique. What a privilege.
Yeah, I think it's privilege. And I do think, similar to you, I come from a place of privilege. I have the most incredibly supportive husband that I couldn't draw up. I didn't think, could exist. And he's able to hold the fort when it comes to when I'm in build mode. But at the same time, he's able to sit down and say, hey, babe, do you think we could generate an extra $1,000 a month on your side? We're about to move into this house and we'll need an extra 1K. Can that come bring? And then he's like, I mean, in 6 months, you don't need to do it right now, but in 6 months. And so I'll make sure in the next 14 days, I've closed another $1,000 in recurring revenue, because that becomes my sole focus for the next 14 days. And I'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, that's fun. And I
To
actually
give
do.
yourself the freedom to go back into doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to add is because, you know, as a white woman sitting here in Australia, very well educated, if I say that I'm in a privileged position, that doesn't also hold the sacrifice that as a family we've agreed to make. So, you know, just because we can pay our bills doesn't mean that our bills are elaborate, and we choose that as a lifestyle in the sense that somebody with my qualifications, with my exposure, all of the things, I could be on huge amounts of money if I wanted to go and work for somebody else. So it's not really a sacrifice because, again, it's a privilege, but it does come with I think it's a lifestyle choice. And that's a lifestyle choice that not every partner is willing to make with a founder. And I think that's a very real decision to make, you know, whether or not that's, which again, that's a values pull, isn't it?
Mind you, I think would be kind of stuck. Pretty sure I'm unemployable at this point.
I'm getting close to it, I must admit.
So Maz, thanks for hanging out in what I'm going to call the sandpit with me.
Sandpit, I love it. You're so welcome. I hope I brought enough buckets and shovels and things to do all the play.
Did we dig enough holes for ourselves? That will be a question to our listeners.
There were a few holes. I think there were also some sandcastles with some cute little shells built on them.
Head to mycoo, mycoo.co/the founder fix, and let us know what you want us to chat about next, because we're here to sit in the messy, the hard, and the often ridiculous reality of building startups. And that's the fix. See you next time.
Bye. Oh my gosh, I love you. You're the best. Imagine if that didn't work.
That'd be hilarious.